Welcome to This Explainer. You know, when you hear the name Odysseus, you're probably instantly thinking of a 3,000-year-old myth packed with angry gods, magical islands, and roaring sea monsters. But today, we're actually going to look right past all those ancient monsters from Homer's epic. Why? Because underneath it all is a profoundly relevant psychological blueprint for surviving the utter chaos of modern life. It turns out the greatest story ever told isn't really about a physical journey at all, it's about what the journey does to a person along the way. Right from the jump, we've got to confront a pretty hard truth about our own ambition. The Stoic philosopher Seneca actually noted this thousands of years ago. He said that when we travel endlessly or just constantly chase these empty ambitions, we have to stop and ask ourselves a really tough question. Are we actually subjecting ourselves to the exact same tragic restlessness that cursed Odysseus? I mean, think about it. Too many of us, in our endless pursuit of the next promotion or the next big milestone, are really just running away from ourselves. We're hoping that on the other side of some major accomplishment, we'll finally feel satisfied. But just like Odysseus, that endless restlessness, it can absolutely become its own kind of curse.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, Setting Sail into the Unknown. So, we're not starting off with some flawless, triumphant hero here. Not at all. We're starting with a deeply flawed survivor who is just trying to navigate an incredibly chaotic world. When we first meet Odysseus, he isn't swinging a sword in victory. He's literally sitting on a beach, desperately homesick, and weeping. That image of a broken man on a beach is so powerful and actually surprisingly modern. Clinical psychologist Dr. Sam Akbar points out that this scene perfectly mirrors modern refugees and survivors of trauma who are desperately seeking connection and just an end to their wandering. He represents a stark post-war reality. He's completely adrift, unsure if the next people he meets are going to help him or hurt him. It's this totally universal human experience of feeling completely lost in a chaotic world.
And it's brilliant how the story shows Odysseus processing all of that pain. When he finally washes ashore and is safely taken in by the Phaeacians, he doesn't just sleep it off. He sits down and recounts his entire traumatic journey in chronological order to finally make sense of it. Dr. Akbar notes that this ancient scene is an absolute mirror for what we now call narrative exposure therapy. It's a real, evidence-based modern treatment for PTSD. By safely retelling his story from start to finish, Odysseus makes new meaning out of his suffering. It proves that healing actually begins when we can finally construct a clear narrative out of all our chaos.
Get this. Odysseus genuinely thought his trip home would take, what, a few weeks? Instead, thanks to a few angry gods and some remarkably bad decisions on his part, it took him 10 years. This beautifully imperfect, winding path is such a great reminder that the route to our goals is almost never a straight line. Setbacks are just a totally natural part of your own personal odyssey. The sea dragged him forward, backward, and completely off course. So, hey, if your life hasn't gone exactly according to your meticulously crafted plan, you're not failing, you are simply on an odyssey.
Moving right along to Section 2, Monsters of the Mind.
Think about this. The physical monsters Odysseus faces are actually these brilliant metaphors for the very real psychological traps that sabotage us today. The monsters haven't disappeared in the modern world, they've just changed their outfits. Take the Cyclops, for example. Odysseus manages to escape the monster by cleverly using the fake name Nobody. But then, he completely ruins his own success by shouting his real name out of pure hubris as he sails away. He had won, the monster was blind, and Odysseus was totally safe, but his ego simply couldn't handle being anonymous. He just had to be known as the guy who beat the monster, literally shouting back, "Odysseus, sacker of cities, did this to you." And because he needed that credit, because he had to boast to the Cyclops, he gets cursed by Poseidon for an entire decade. It just proves that our own ego can rapidly destroy the very things our talent just built. As author Ryan Holiday notes, this is a classic ego is the enemy story. The most dangerous moment isn't usually the struggle itself, it's the exact instant right after you win, when your guard drops and your pride totally takes the wheel.
Okay, let's look at another really famous trap, the sirens. The crucial point here is that the sirens didn't just sing some universally beautiful song to everyone. Instead, they sang a highly personalized song, telling each specific sailor exactly what they wanted to hear. Sound familiar? It totally should, because today, those sirens are the algorithms. They're the infinite scrolls and the tailored social media feeds designed to completely trap your attention by perfectly reflecting your own biases and desires right back at you.
Odysseus actually knew his own willpower simply wasn't going to cut it against a temptation that strong. He knew if he heard the song, he would steer his ship straight into the rocks. So he forged a pact to have his men tie him to the mast before the song ever even started. It's amazing because behavioral psychologists today literally call this a Ulysses Pact. It's a pre-commitment device. You don't rely on willpower in the heat of the moment. You literally lock the distractions away before the temptation even has a chance to begin.
Which brings us to Section 3, Quiet Resistance, the everyday battle.
While Odysseus was out there fighting these loud, epic physical battles across the sea, his wife Penelope was waging a completely different, much quieter war back home. And honestly, it's equally profound for our daily lives. Surrounded by aggressive suitors demanding that she remarry and give up her kingdom, Penelope claimed she'd choose a new husband only after she finished weaving a burial shroud. But here is the absolute brilliant part. She secretly and stubbornly unraveled her own weaving every single night for years. She fought a war with no swords and no glory, just quiet, stubborn endurance in the dark.
Her quiet rebellion perfectly captures this clinical concept known as an internal locus of control. It shows that even when you feel completely trapped, taking charge of just one small daily action is an incredibly powerful form of persistence. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus summarized, persist and resist. Penelope proves that sometimes the most heroic thing you can possibly do is simply refuse to give up on something when literally everyone else is telling you to let it go.
And finally, Section 4, Finding True Ithaca. So after 20 brutal years, Odysseus finally arrives home. But he arrives as an unrecognized beggar, and he finds his home is completely changed. We learn pretty quickly that the destination itself is rarely what we expect it to be. As this ancient text teaches us, home isn't necessarily a physical place at all. It's actually an internal alignment with our values. The friction of the journey, that is actually where our true meaning lives. Dr. Akbar emphasizes that if you rush the journey just to get to the destination, you miss out on what being a human being actually is. The friction, the setbacks, the monsters, that's the actual lifeblood of your psychological growth.
There's this stunning poem by C.P. Cavafy that really brings this home. It illustrates the ultimate realization of the Stoics, that the journey itself is what gave you the experience and the wisdom. The obstacle truly was the way. The poem beautifully states that when you finally arrive, even if you find Ithaca poor, it won't have fooled you. Why? Because you will have become so full of experience that you finally understand what Ithaca means. It was never really about the destination. It was about who the journey forced you to become. So before you let the algorithms totally distract you today, and before your own ego blows you completely off course, you have to define your true internal home. Ask yourself, what are you really sailing toward? Are you embracing the friction of your own journey, or are you just running away from yourself? Define your values, tie yourself firmly to the mast, and no matter what monsters you face along the way, keep sailing.